Welcome to this presentation on eTPES, the Electronic Teacher and Principal Evaluation System for Fall 2016. This presentation will also include information on the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System as it will appear in eTPES. In order to advance the slides, just simply click your mouse and you may click on the speaker icon to hear the narration. Our presentation today will go over many things. We'll look at the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System components, including the Professional Growth or Improvement Plan, observations and ratings, and the metrics of student outcomes. We'll look at eTPES and what has to happen for setup, including the rubric or rubric alignment, options for forms, the frequency of evaluation for teachers, framework selections for teachers, and the use of an MOU for teachers and principals, and student growth measures for teachers and principals. We'll also look at the requirements for eTPES and timelines for evaluation. The purposes for today's training will be to provide an overview of eTPES setup and use for the 2016 and 2017 school year. That setup will include the review of the requirements of the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System and will provide you information regarding the different requirements for the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, the Ohio Principal Evaluation System, and the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System. The passage of House Bill 64 in July 2015 directed the State Board of Education to develop and adopt a standard-based framework for the evaluation of school counselors. The bill further directed each school district Board of Education to adopt a school counselor evaluation policy by September 30th, 2016 that conforms to the state board framework. That House bill is now Ohio Revised Code 3319.113. Our next slides will discuss the requirements of this law. The law requires that school counselors are evaluated under the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System. But you may be asking, who is considered a school counselor? School counselors are licensed according to the Ohio Revised Code 3301.24.05, and they have completed a master's degree program and an extensive internship. From legislation, the State Board of Education was required to adopt a standards-based framework by May 31st, 2016 for the evaluation of school counselors. That has occurred. Part of that framework and legislation requires that the school counselor must demonstrate the ability to produce positive student outcomes using metrics, including those from school report card data when appropriate. Key provisions of the law state that the school counselor evaluation system must be aligned with the Ohio standards for school counselors. It also requires school counselors to demonstrate their ability in all the areas identified by those standards. So that means all standard areas are evaluated for the school counselor. The school counselor has to be evaluated annually, but there is a less frequent evaluation option that's similar to the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, less frequent evaluation option for those teachers and school counselors who have earned a rating of skilled or accomplished. The ratings of ineffective, developing, skilled, and accomplished will be used for the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System. At the local level, districts must adopt a school policy regarding the evaluation of school counselors no later than September 30th, 2016, and annually report on the implementation of the school counselor evaluation policy. eTPES will be used for this reporting. School counselors must clearly demonstrate their ability to positively impact student outcomes. The school counselor and evaluator should collaboratively predetermine metrics that they will use for this portion of the evaluation rubric at the beginning of the evaluation cycle. It is recommended that the school counselor and evaluator select metrics that most clearly reflect the work of the school counselor being evaluated. The data from the student outcome metrics must be available prior to the close of the evaluation cycle for the school year, though. The student outcome metrics do not have to match the standard area goal on the professional growth plan, but it is recommended that the student outcome metric is supported by the performance goal when writing the professional growth plan. The evaluation rubric does include a seventh area. This seventh area focuses on the metrics of student outcomes. The school counselor will provide data demonstrating that students' skills, knowledge, or behaviors have positively changed as a result of the school counselor's activities. The school counselor must clearly demonstrate the ability to positively impact student outcomes. As stated before, the school counselor and evaluator should collaboratively predetermine the metrics that they'll use for this portion of the evaluation rubric at the beginning of the evaluation cycle. Please keep in mind that the data from the student outcome metrics must be available prior to close of the evaluation cycle for that school year. For additional information, you can consult the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System model, where you will find a sample table of the metrics of student outcomes and other additional information on this topic in the appendices. A rating from that seventh area of the rubric, which focuses on metrics of student outcomes, will be entered into eTPES. Take a moment to examine the rubric that focuses on student outcomes. Notice under Skilled, the school counselor clearly demonstrates a positive change in students' knowledge, behavior, or skills within at least one student domain. In order to earn the accomplished rating, the school counselor will clearly demonstrate a positive change in students' knowledge, behavior, or skills within the 3 student domains. Those domains focus on academics, career, and social emotional skills. As we finish our overview for the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System, please keep in mind, if you'd like additional information, you can attend additional trainings on the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System. Now we will turn our attention to the requirements for the setup of eTPES. This is a screenshot that the superintendent or designee will see, alerting them to complete the LEA setup. This is no change from last year. The superintendent or designee will need to click on the link to view the setup screen. Once the superintendent or designee clicks on View Setup, he or she will be taken to this screen and will need to click on Edit to begin the LEA setup. The superintendent or designee will be entering many decisions in eTPES for setup in the fall. Those decisions include the following: the rubric choice, or if a rubric needs to be aligned to the state rubric. The superintendent or designee will enter what the district has determined regarding the use of forms in eTPES, whether that will be the option 1, where only state and Ohio Department of Education forms are used, or option 2, where combination of state and local forms are used, or option 3, where only ratings and the student growth measures or metrics of student outcomes data are entered. An entry of the decision regarding the evaluation interval for teachers must be entered. The framework choice for teachers must be entered. The district will have to enter whether they will be using a memorandum of understanding regarding student growth measures for teachers and principals this school year. The district will enter the decision if they will be participating in roster verification setup. And then the default percentages for student growth measures for teachers and principals will be entered at a later time this school year. In the eTPES setup, the district will enter their choice regarding rubric alignment. Districts will need to choose if they will use the unmodified rubrics for teacher, principal, and school counselor evaluation. If the district has used a modified rubric in the past, they will have an available choice to continue to use the modified rubric that was aligned previously. If the district is choosing to use a newly modified rubric, they will need to complete the rubric alignment tool. This screenshot shows the teacher rubric alignment choice for a district. In the eTPES setup, districts will need to indicate their use of rubric. Districts will need to choose if they will use the unmodified rubrics for teacher, principal, and school counselor evaluations. If the district has used a modified rubric in the past, they will have an available choice to continue to use the modified rubric that was aligned previously. If the district is choosing to use a newly modified rubric, they will need to complete the rubric alignment tool. As stated before, districts will need to choose if they're going to use unmodified rubrics for teacher, principal, and school counselor evaluation. If the district has used a modified rubric in the past, they will have an available choice to continue to use the modified rubric that was aligned previously. But because this is the first year of implementation for the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System, there is no choice for using a previously aligned rubric. If a district chooses to use an aligned rubric rather than the OSES rubric, the district will need to complete the alignment tool. If the district does not employ any school counselors, it can mark that. And then the school counselor tools within eTPES will not be activated for that district. Previously, when it comes to teacher and principal evaluation, it was possible that some districts may have been under a collective bargaining agreement that was in place prior to the implementation of the law. This is no longer the case, and all districts are implementing teacher and principal evaluation now. It is possible that districts may elect to pilot the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System only if the district has a collective bargaining agreement entered into prior to September the 29th, 2015, and that collective bargaining agreement is still in effect. Just as in the past, districts will be making a determination about what forms will be used in eTPES. Districts will need to determine what forms they will be using. There are three choices regarding the use of forms in eTPES. Each of these options is a separate choice for the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, the Ohio Principal Evaluation System, and the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System. Regarding the use of forms in eTPES, there are three options. Option 1 is where the district would be only using state or ODE forms. Option 2 would be where the district would use a combination of state and local forms. And finally, option 3 would be where the district would be entering the ratings and student growth measures or metrics of student outcomes data. Another option that's recorded in eTPES is for the evaluation interval of teachers to occur less frequently. In order for a teacher to be evaluated less frequently, The teacher must have earned an accomplished or skilled rating in the previous school year. Then, in non-full evaluation years, the student growth measures for that teacher must remain at average or higher. This less frequent evaluation interval does not apply to principals. And since this is the first year of the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System implementation, there is no option yet for the school counselor to be evaluated less frequently. This option will be available for school counselors beginning with the 2017-2018 school year based on the earned ratings of accomplished or skilled that the school counselor would earn this school year. When available, in order for a school counselor to be evaluated less frequently, the metrics of student outcomes must remain at skilled or higher on the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System rubric. The school counselor must have metrics of student outcomes every year. And just to review, if a district or community school determines that it will evaluate accomplished teachers every 3 years and skilled teachers every 2 years, the teachers will complete a professional growth or improvement plan, be observed at least once, will have at least one conference with the evaluator, and will complete student growth measures. This applies only to the 3-year accomplished and the 2-year skilled intervals. Beginning in the 2017-2018 school year, if a district or community school determines that it will evaluate accomplished school counselors every 3 years and skilled school counselors every 2 years, the school counselor will complete a professional growth or improvement plan, be observed at least once, will have at least one conference with the evaluator, and will complete metrics of student outcomes. This applies only to the 3-year accomplished and the 2-year skilled intervals. And again, this begins the 2017-2018 school year. There is an available choice for teacher evaluation framework. The principal and the school counselor evaluation frameworks will follow the one available state framework for each evaluation system. The available framework choices for teacher evaluation are to use the original framework, the alternative framework, or the sliding scale framework that was in place previously. Only those districts that had taken advantage of the sliding scale alternative framework in the past can have this choice available to them, and they must still be under the bargaining agreement that was in place when that decision was made. This graphic depicts the original teacher evaluation model, the model that was used in previous school years. As you can see, the middle circle represents that the evaluation is comprised of 50% performance on the standards and 50% from student growth measures. Your district or community school may choose to use this model or framework again this school year. This is a district decision that is entered by the superintendent or designee and is chosen by the entire district or community school. This graphic depicts the alternative teacher evaluation model. As you can see, this represents that the evaluation is comprised of 50% performance on the standards, 35% from student growth measures, and the remaining 15% is from a choice of student surveys, portfolios, teacher self-evaluation, peer review evaluation, or a district-developed component. Your district or community school may choose to use this model this school year. Again, this is a district decision, and the model chosen is to be used by the entire district or community school. However, the 15% component will be chosen for teachers on an individual basis. For principal evaluation, all evaluations will follow the original framework of 50% based on performance measures and 50% based upon student growth measures. When looking at the framework for the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System, note that the standards are the basis for the ratings. This is a graphic of the standards-based framework. Districts are required to align with the framework. The model provides more information than the framework alone. For additional information, please see the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System model, and you may wish to attend a training from a state trainer at a local ESC. The Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System model is designed to provide support for the implementation of the State Board of Education approved School Counselor Evaluation Framework, and this model is a professional growth model and is intended to be used to assist in improving school counselor performance. Evaluations of school counselors must be conducted by evaluators who are approved by the local Board of Education and who have successfully completed the OSES state training. A strong school counselor evaluation calls for ongoing collaboration and authentic conversation between the school counselor and the evaluator. And the foundation of the system is the transparent, two-way gathering and sharing of evidence that informs the school counselor's final summative rating at the end of the school year. Once the superintendent or designee has completed the LEA setup and overnight processing occurs, the district can begin using eTPES for the performance side of the evaluation systems. The system will allow setup for the use of student growth measures and metrics of student outcomes at a later time. The following information is presented in order for districts to think about and make decisions before having to enter the setup in eTPES. Later this school year, the superintendent or designee will enter a decision based upon participation in Safe Harbor and the use of value added this year. What you will see on this screen is that the decision to use value added for teachers is a separate decision from the decision to use value added for principals. You should notice that if value added will be used, a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, is required to be uploaded as a PDF. The MOU PDF can be the same for both the teacher and principal usage, but would have to be uploaded in each area. Questions have been raised regarding principal evaluation and if an MOU is needed if the principals are not part of a bargaining unit. This may not be an MOU, but it is some sort of documentation or agreement that value added is to be used in the principal evaluation. What this document is called may differ from district to district based upon what is in place at the local level. School counselors will use metrics of student outcomes and do not have the availability of a choice to use Safe Harbor. Remember that teachers and principals will not use value-added ratings from state tests that were given in the 14-15 and the 15-16 school years as part of their evaluations unless the districts and educators have entered into a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, to allow the continued use of these value-added ratings for the 2015-2016 and the 2016-2017 school years. And further, value-added ratings from these state tests will not be used for making decisions regarding dismissal, retention, tenure, or compensation unless districts and educators have entered into a Memorandum of Understanding to allow for the use of these value-added ratings. When no value-added data are used and no other student academic growth measures are available, the teacher evaluation shall be based solely on teacher performance measures. Performance measures are only applied to A1 teachers who have no MOU and hence no value-added data. Since A1 teachers would not be eligible for less frequent evaluations without a student growth measure, districts could decide to use approved vendor assessments or local measures, such as SLOs, for those teachers. If a district determines that it will use value-added data in evaluations this year, value-added usage will not differ from the way it has been used in the past. All the legal requirements and business rules established through the Ohio Department of Education regarding the use of value-added would need to be followed. For Category B and C teachers, there really is no change in the use of ODE approved vendor assessment data and no change when using SLOs. The district may use value-added shared attribution for these teachers if an MOU is in place for using value-added data for all applicable educators. When there is no MOU present and the district has determined that it will not be using value-added data in the calculation of student growth measures for principal or teacher evaluation, then the superintendent or designee signifies this by marking no separately for the teachers and no for principals. At this time, it is anticipated that the superintendent or designee may need to enter the decision if the district will participate in roster verification or linkage this spring. This is a decision that will be made by all districts regardless of the use of an MOU or not regarding the use of value-added data. If the district chooses to participate in roster verification, a contact will need to be designated. If the district determines that it will not participate in roster verification, then data available from eTPES will be used. This district then would not have the opportunity to verify the value-added data. It is possible that the local Board of Education may elect not to conduct an evaluation of a teacher or principal who meets one of the following requirements. The teacher or principal was on leave from the school district for 50% or more of the school year, as calculated by the board, or the teacher or principal has submitted a notice of retirement and that notice has been accepted by the board not later than the first day of December of the school year in which the evaluation is otherwise scheduled to be conducted. This is not applicable to school counselors. As a refresher, think about who is evaluated under the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, or OTES. Any person who is employed under a teaching license or under a professional or permanent teacher certificate and who spends at least 50% of his or her time employed providing student instruction. This does not apply to a teacher employed as a substitute, and this usually excludes professionals such as speech pathologists, occupational and physical therapists, teachers on assignment, nurses, school psychologists, and school counselors. School counselors would be evaluated under the Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System. When thinking about the evaluation of principals under the Ohio Principal Evaluation System, or OPES, you should focus not on the administrative title, but rather on the role and alignment, if any, to the Principal Performance Rating rubric and the Ohio Standards for Principals. There are 3 questions you should ask. Is the administrator serving as an instructional leader? Do the duties of the administrator fall into at least 2 of the 5 principal standards? Does the administrator evaluate multiple staff members? Only those administrators meeting all 3 criteria would be evaluated under the principal evaluation system, including the use of student growth measures. Administrators who would not be required to be evaluated under the principal evaluation system include those who do not fit all of those 3 considerations. These administrators may have limited contact with teachers and/or students, have narrowly defined roles and administrative responsibilities that do not directly relate to the principal standards. They do not provide instructional leadership, nor do they evaluate multiple teachers. All school counselors who are not under a collective bargaining agreement that was entered into prior to September 29, 2015 and is still in place will be fully evaluated this school year. If a school counselor serves in a dual role, such as the role of school counselor and some other educating professional, then you must complete the evaluation for the school counselor and the evaluation for other roles of OTES or OPES. In order to be an evaluator of teachers, the evaluator must complete a 3-day state training and then participate in successful recalibration every 2 years thereafter. The evaluator must also complete successful passage of an online credentialing test and be approved by the local Board of Education as an evaluator of teachers. In order to be an evaluator of principals, the evaluator must complete a 2-day state training and then successful recalibration every 2 years thereafter, be successful in their passage of an online credentialing test, and be approved by the local Board of Education as an evaluator of principals. In order to be an evaluator of school counselors, the evaluator must attain a certificate of attendance for completion of a 1-day state training, and that certificate must be uploaded into eTPES as evidence. The evaluator must be approved by the local Board of Education as an evaluator of school counselors, and the superintendent or designee must verify that in eTPES. Evaluator credentials are visible in eTPES. The Certificate of Attendance for completion of State Ohio School Counselor Evaluation System training must be uploaded into eTPES as evidence. Credentialing for OTES and OPES will automatically be loaded into eTPES upon the successful online credentialing of the evaluator. All of these credentials are visible on the eTPES home screen for the evaluator, where all credentials are listed for OTES, OPES, and OSES. So how do you determine if a teacher is placed on or remains on a professional growth plan? Teachers rated accomplished from the previous year, which would be the 15-16 school year, will be placed on a self-directed professional growth plan for the 16-17 school year. Teachers who are rated skilled from the previous year will be placed on a collaborative professional growth plan for the 16-17 school year. Teachers rated developing from the previous year will be placed on a directed professional plan with administrative approval. Remember, it is a local decision to place an educator on an improvement plan as needed based upon deficiencies in any individual component of the evaluation system. While this does not yet apply to school counselors for the 16-17 school year, it will apply to school counselors beginning in the 2017-2018 school year based upon the ratings earned by the school counselor this school year. School counselors will begin the 2016-2017 school year on a collaborative professional growth plan unless the district has determined that the school counselor will be placed on an improvement plan. For teachers rated ineffective in the 15-16 school year, that teacher must be on an improvement plan for the 16-17 school year and must go through a full evaluation in the 16-17 school year. The improvement plan will be directed by the evaluator, and remember, again, it is always a local decision to place an educator on an improvement plan as needed based upon deficiencies in any individual component of the evaluation system. Later this school year, the superintendent or designee will enter default percentages for student growth measures for teachers and principals in eTPES. There will be no entry of student growth measure default percentages for school counselors because this does not apply to school counselors. Metrics of student outcomes are included in the school counselor evaluation rubric and are used in place of student growth measures. For the district that has determined that value added will not be used and the district has no MOU in place, this is an example of the screen that will appear for teacher student growth measure percentages as the superintendent or designee enters the default percentages determined by the district into the available cells. If a district determines that it will use value added and it does have an MOU in place, the entry of default percentages will be made for category A1 and A2 teachers in addition to those that you see on this screen, and those cells will be available. Percentages for student growth measures for teachers and principal evaluation will follow the same business rules that we have always used. This screen shows options in eTPES that are available for categorizing educators based upon available data. Once districts have entered available student growth measure data and performance data into eTPES later this school year, the system will complete the calculations for the final summative rating. The system will convert each of the ratings to a point value based upon a 600-point scale. This graphic shows how the scores on student growth measures and performance standards are converted on the original teacher evaluation framework. These score conversions would also apply to the Ohio Principal Evaluation System. This graphic shows how the scores on student growth measures, performance standards, the alternative components are converted for the alternative teacher evaluation framework. So why use a 600-point scale for both the original and alternative frameworks? The 600-point scale provides advantages. It accommodates both the 1 through 4 and the 1 through 5 rating ladders used as inputs in the evaluation system, as well as allowing for minimal use of decimals in the summative ratings. This slide shows a final summative rating sheet using the original framework for teachers. Note that there really are no changes for teacher and principal evaluation from last year regarding the final summative rating and the final summative sheet. This slide shows an example of what will appear for a performance rating of a school counselor after 2 observations of that school counselor. Note that not every standard is selected in each observation, but each standard does have a rating when you look at both of the rubrics. This is a requirement of law that the school counselor be evaluated in all standard areas. When determining the final summative rating for the school counselor, you'll need to determine a rating for each of the rubric areas based upon the available evidence from multiple interactions. You will look at the larger picture of performance across all areas of the rubric. Although all areas are important for effective school counseling practice, you may find it appropriate to more strongly weight patterns of behavior in one area over another. The key point is that the evaluator should consider no one area in isolation, but should analyze each in relation to all other areas of performance. Determine which of the 4 performance levels is most appropriate for the school counselor based on this holistic process. A timeline is provided for your next steps. In August and September, you should set up eTPES. Then starting in September and throughout the year, you'll focus on professional growth planning, observations, and conferences. Early this fall, teachers and principals, if needed, will be developing SLOs and reviewing student growth data, and the school counselors will be working on metrics of student outcomes. Then, by the middle of the year, the first observation data needs to be entered into eTPES. ODE recommends that by the middle of April, teachers administer the post-assessment for the SLO, and thereafter complete the SLO scoring template for submission to the principal. Then the principal will begin entering vendor and local measure ratings into eTPES. By May the 1st, principals will complete the evaluations for each teacher, and by May the 10th, principals provide each teacher with a written report of the results of the teacher's evaluation, and by the middle of June, OSES and OTES evaluations are entered into eTPES before it closes. Before the end of the school year, you'll want to make sure that all educators have entered their PINs for evaluation. For principal evaluation, the principal's preliminary evaluation must be completed 60 days prior to contract action, but prior to June 1st, you must notify administrators about contract renewal or non-renewal. And by June the 15th, it is anticipated that eTPES will be closing for the 16-17 school year. Any copies or information that you need from eTPES must be made prior to this time. If you have questions or need support, please contact one of the state eTPES trainers. For additional help, you can contact us through any of these links. You can follow the Ohio Department of Education on social media. Thank you for your attention and participating in this presentation.